Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining me today. Have you heard about this story of the robbery at the Louvre? It's fairly interesting, so I'm going to just get right into it here. On November 19th, 2025, a highly professional gang carried out a fast daytime robbery at the Louvre in Paris, targeting a collection of French imperial jewels linked to Napoleon Bonaparte and his successors. They stole about 100 million US dollars. That's the stuff they stole. The thieves entered around 9:30 a.m. while the museum was open to visitors. They used a basket lift or freight elevator on the Seine-facing facade to access the second floor, then broke a window and smashed the display cases in the Apollo Gallery to seize the jewels. The robbery reportedly lasted only 4 to 7 minutes inside the gallery. About 8 objects were stolen. One of the pieces was a crown of Napoleon III's wife, was left behind. The thieves dropped it while fleeing, and it was recovered damaged outside the museum. This is, like I said, this is $100 million worth of items. So they include things like an emerald necklace and earrings from Marie-Louise Bonaparte, Napoleon's second wife, a sapphire set, various pieces from other collections. The investigation is open for theft by an organized gang and criminal conspiracy. Police recovered equipment at the scene like angle grinders, blowtorches, gasoline, and they're reviewing CCTV footage and escape routes right now. That's pretty wild. It's like something out of a movie. And, maybe they'll catch the guys, maybe they won't. But I just thought that was pretty interesting. And what I thought was even more interesting was looking into who's responsible for protecting this museum. Well, it would be the museum director and the head of security, right? So who are those people? There they are. Those two ladies right there. Diversity hires. The head of security's been there for just about a year. She was hired by the director, who's been there for about 4 years. And on their watch, they let $100 million of national heritage get stolen. Because whoever's in charge of hiring here wanted to make themselves look like they were modern liberals, open-minded, men and women, equality, all this kind of stuff. You get it's incompetence when you start doing that. But anyway, I just thought that was funny. But anyway, elsewhere in Europe, things are not looking so hot. You got the grooming gang stuff going on in the UK. You got this basically protest or riot going on because of the 10-year-old in Ireland who was raped by an African migrant. So they're standing outside the place. I think it's the Migrant Hotel or something like that, or it may be the place where they're holding the guy. I'm not sure, but there's a bunch of police there. There's a bunch of protesters, and the protesters are not happy. Obviously, they're claiming they're taking back their country, and they're tired of this of all these immigrants ruining their culture and raping their daughters, which is understandable. I think we can all understand. But here's a little video of their rioting.
He's Irish.
This wasn't the one I was thinking it was. I thought this was the one where they were throwing the bottles at the police. But you can see there's fires going, a bunch of protesters. I think they set a cop car on fire. That is. So yeah, a lot going on. People are not happy, and they shouldn't be happy. Their leaders have failed them, and there is going to be a wave of right wing leaders taking over Europe to straighten this mess out, kicking out these weirdo lefties who think destroying their country with mass migration is a good idea. I've already seen numerous charts that showed the social cost and the monetary cost of having mass migration like this. And it destabilizes the society, increases crime rates, increases tax burden on the citizens. A lot of the migrants don't work. A lot of them get free housing, free healthcare, free food, and all the while the native population is having to go to work and uh, pay for these people to come in and destabilize their societies. Make it make sense. So the normal people are like, well, are here in Ireland especially, they're like, our leaders have failed us. So we have to take matters into our own hands. We're going to take our country back. We're going to take over power. We are tired of these people screwing with our lives, making our lives harder, making our lives more difficult, putting us in danger, putting our daughters in danger. And it's good. Yeah, take back your power. Same things happening all across, well, even across the world. We just saw in Japan, they got a new prime minister and she's going to crack down on immigration instantly. They had a fraction of people come into Japan that Europe has had, and they put an instant stop to it. They're like, nope, the cost is too high. We don't need this. We would rather have depopulation of our own people than to populate our country with a bunch of uh, outsiders and migrants that only cause problems and don't contribute. So not only that, but then you're going to have reform in the UK. They're going to take over. That you're going to have Le Pen in France. You're going to have, uh, well, you already have Meloni in Italy. You got Orban. You know, Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic have already gone that way. You're going to have the AfD in Germany, and it's just going to be this huge tidal wave pushing back against this migration stuff. And it's going to be very similar to what is going on right now in the United States, where Trump and ICE are going around and they're rounding up all these criminals. They're getting them out of the country. They're forcing people to self-deport, and they're stabilizing the society. Now, there's only a certain amount of outsiders that you can allow into your society before it starts getting destabilized. And the Europe has let in way too many. It used to work just fine when like the UK was only letting in 50,000 people a year. They could assimilate. You had the money to pay for them to get on their feet and work their way into society. But when you start importing hundreds of thousands of them in a year, 300,000, it's way too many. It overloads all the systems. It overloads the housing. It costs the taxpayers a fortune. It puts a burden on the cops and the officers that are trying to enforce the law. They can't do their jobs because they don't hire enough police officers to deal with the influx. So, it's not it's not a good situation, and something like 80% of Europeans in most of these countries, they are in favor of mass deportations, and their leaders really don't care. They still are bringing more in, but the people will get their way. They they're envious of the United States. They want a Trump in their country to clean up this mess. So, and it's because of this kind of stuff. So, this is people are tired of this. This girl Maya from Sweden, 16 years old, was attacked and raped by an Eritrean named Muhammad when she was on her way home from work. And not as if that's not that's a horrible story, but then it comes to sentencing, it wasn't a bad enough rape for the guy to be deported because it didn't last long enough and due to cultural issues. Instead, he's going to prison. They're going to pay for this guy to live off their dime for 3 years in prison. But that's how these court systems are working. They're tipped in favor of these people that the native people don't even want in the country. And yet now he commits a crime. He gets to live for 3 years, all expenses paid, in a Swedish prison. All you have to do is kick this guy out. Send him back to his own country. You don't spend any money on him other than getting him out. He doesn't deserve to be in your country. Even when he gets out of prison, you should deport him. He doesn't deserve. He's shown that he's not worthy of living in Sweden. And this is what the people are upset about. It's not that hard to understand. What's hard to understand is why the leaders are so incompetent and why they keep pushing this narrative. Sweden's now something like 30% foreign born. That's a huge percentage of the population, the largest in Europe. And so while serious things like that are going on in Europe, and like the grooming gangs, this is a video of one of the survivors of the grooming gangs in the UK. They're doing inquiries right now. They're not taking the victims seriously. They're calling them liars. They're forcing them to leave the inquiry. I think 3 or 4 women now have already left the inquiry because it was going nowhere and because they were getting called liars. They're the ones who got raped by these people. They're just trying to get justice. They're trying to alert people. And the leaders are telling them that they're liars. So let's take a look at this one.
People responsible for this were Muslim men of Pakistani origin. As I understand it, you wanted to sort of laser focus on that, and you got the feeling that this inquiry, as it was unfolding, didn't want to do that. They wanted to widen the remit so that the finger wasn't pointed at Muslim men of Pakistani origin. Would that be a fair summary of what was concerning you?
Yeah, absolutely. In mine and a few others' opinions, there was already the ICSA that widened the panel, and we really wanted to be able to crack down on rape gangs here that are predominantly Muslim males. We felt almost like we had to tiptoe around that subject, so we became quite fearful, really, of describing what ethnicity our abusers were, and it should never get to that. However, you have to look at the lady that was running the panel along with...
See, this is such a stupid way in order to police things. Well, can you describe the perpetrators to me without using race or ethnicity or height or hair color or eye color or gender? Right? So they just... any kind of distinction between people, if it's of a migrant, is taboo. Well, you can't say that these are Muslim. You can't say they're Pakistani, even though they're the ones doing it, and there's data that backs it up and that shows that it's plainly coming from these kinds of people who come from these countries. If you wanted to actually solve the problem, that would be useful information. And then you could start inquiring. It doesn't mean that now all Pakistanis are bad people and you're going to round them up, you're going to kill them. I mean, it's a starting point to know where you're looking for the crime. But they care more about the inquiry panel. They care more about protecting the criminals, protecting these migrants who are for decades have been running around unchecked, doing God knows what to how many people. And they're not doing anything about it. And then somebody comes forward to testify, to give their opinion, to tell them what actually happened to them, a real person who survived this real rape, and they dismiss them and they call them racists.
Home Office, she was a ethnic minority ambassador, so I don't believe personally that she was ever pro-victims, pro-survivors in this case. Everyone that's on these panels are very biased. They're not impartial. They're not for the survivors. I think it was a way to find out what survivors knew, what they were going to raise, and how they could cover it up in the future.
Well said, Ellie. And if you don't mind, I'm going to read 3 paragraphs, your final 3 paragraphs of your resignation letter, because they're very powerful. You wrote to the inquiry, just such as it is at this stage. The final turning point for me was the push to change the remit, to widen it in ways that downplay the racial and religious motivations behind our abuse. For many of us, these were not incidental factors. They were central to why we were targeted and why institutions failed to act. To erase that truth is to rewrite history. I cannot take part in a process that manipulates survivors, censors our voices, and tries to...
It's just disgusting. Even some of these people, these gang members, will say exactly why they're doing this. And it has to do with religious and ethnic reasons. But if she repeats what they tell her, it's a no-no. It's taboo. It's bad. You're Islamophobe. You're a racist. How are you supposed to get anything done like that? And just as a side note, I mean, it's not like they don't know that there's a bunch of crime happening in the UK. I mean, just in England and Wales, I've got some data for you here from April 2024 to March of 2025. This is based on the crime survey for England and Wales. This is just England and Wales, not Scotland or Northern Ireland. But just look at this. Violence against persons. About 1.9 million offenses in that 1 year. Shoplifting, about 530,000 offenses. Robberies, about 79,000 offenses. Fraud, 1.2 million police recorded, about 4.2 million total, including some that were including unreported cases. Now, that's a lot of cases. You'd think that they would have solved millions of cases over that year. No, that's not the case. They've solved about 7 to 10% in a whole year. That's it. So now you've got a whole slew more coming in. So, they solved 400,000 cases and they've got 3,800,000 left from last year. And now they've got 4 million more they got to deal with. And so they're not really taking crime seriously. They're not really trying to solve a lot of these cases. They're letting crime grow. They're letting it get out of control. And it's people are getting tired of it, as they should be. A 10% charge rate for violent crimes, that's abysmal. What are they doing this whole time? Well, I'll tell you what they're doing this whole time. They've got bigger and better crimes that they have to deal with, right? And so that they can't waste their time on things like rapes and violence. They have people who are pouring coffee down drains in the street, and that is just a horrible, horrible deal. This lady right here is fined $150, 150 pounds for pouring technically is the illegal. She was disposing of liquid illegally. This is what the cops are wasting their time on. Let me read this article to you. This is on the BBC. A West London council. Oh, they reversed it. A West London council has reversed its decision to fine a woman £150 for pouring the remnants of coffee down a gully. So this is the kind of stuff that they're wasting their time on. Oh, we got to really get to the bottom of this case. Is she or isn't she guilty? We should have a meeting. We should have counsel. Oh gosh. Meanwhile, 100 people are being raped. So this woman lives in Kew. Said she thought that she was acting responsibly when she poured out a small amount of coffee from her reusable cup down the drain rather than risk spilling it on the bus she was about to catch to work. She was stopped by 3 enforcement officers at the bus stop near Richmond Station and issued with a fixed penalty notice. 3 officers show up. How did they even know she poured it down the drain? That's weird. But the 3 officers show up. Meanwhile, they could be out here fixing real problems, protecting real victims. There's no victim here. You know what they said it was? Is that it was environmental damage. It's harming the environment. Environment matters more than young girls to these people. The council said it canceled the fine as it was likely that Miss Yeiselert's appeal would have been rescinded because of a minor contravention, which the recipient agreed not to repeat. Before the council canceled the fine, she told BBC News, "I noticed my bus was approaching, so I just poured the leftover bit. It wasn't much. It was just a tiny little bit. As soon as I turned around, I noticed 3 men, enforcement officers, chasing me, and they stopped me immediately." She said she thought they were going to speak with her about an issue with the bus when she was stopped on October 10th and had no clue pouring liquids into the road gully was illegal. She said the encounter was quite intimidating and she was left feeling shaky as she went to work. This was quite a shock, she said. She added that she asked the law enforcement officers if there were any signs or information warning people of the law, but she received no response. It's just so stupid, right? She called for the law to be made clearer with signs near bins and bus stops. Before the council canceled the fine, she had appealed it and issued a complaint with the authority. The council spokesperson had earlier said, "Nobody likes receiving a fine, and we always aim to apply our policies fairly and with understanding. We are committed to protecting Richmond's waterways and keeping our borough's streets clean and safe. Enforcement action is the only taken when necessary, and resident who feels a fine has been issued incorrectly can request a review." So as drains into the river, and these tiny droplets of coffee would so damage the waterway that they need to arrest this. This is what they're spending their time doing. After all the stuff that I just went through, real problems, real crime, 10% crime solve rate, shoplifting through the roof, violence through the roof, fraud, and they're spending their resources on a lady dumping a little bit of coffee down a drain. Talk about mismanaged priorities. So let's see what else we got here. That's enough for Europe. Let's take a look at. Now, this is a guy who's running for Senate in Maine. He apparently is a Democrat, and he has this tattooed on his chest, and he admitted that he does. It's apparently a Nazi symbol. Graham Plattner. He said that he got it when he was drunk one night. And I just think this is funny because for the last however many years, the lefties have been calling the conservatives Nazis, Hitler. Can't find a single tattoo on any of them like this. And now this guy shows up, a Democrat, with his Nazi tattoo and dead silent. Nobody's bringing it up. Nobody's mentioning it. Because the Democrats really are the fascist ones. And it's part of this same thing where it's constant projection all the time. They're the fascists, so they call the Republicans fascist. They're the racists, so they call the Republicans racist. It's constant projection. Anything they accuse you of doing is something that they do. That's how the game is played. They don't want you to know that because they like to have that power over you. But here's another example of it. They've been saying nothing but Nazi, Hitler, fascist for the last 10 years. And now their guy is the one with the Nazi symbol tattooed on his chest. It's not surprising to me because I know who these people are. I know how they think. I know how they view the world. They want everyone to follow what they want. They're not interested in open dialogue. They're not interested in free speech. They're not interested in a world where there's diverse ideas and opinions. They are like they're control freaks who want to tell you how to live your life. They want to control every aspect of your life. They want to dictate to you how you should live. They think they know better than you. They think they know what you need more than you know what you need. They love having power and control over you. But, nobody's going to mention anything about this guy. What they're going to do is they're going to quietly and slowly just have this guy vanish, and they'll replace him with somebody else and never bring it up again. All the while upping their rhetoric about how Republicans are Nazis. So if that's not making Democrats disgusting enough, how about some fraud? This is more Minneapolis fraud. The 75th person has now been charged in the $300 million fraud case. 75 people. And you know what the names of these people are? Abdul this, Ahmad that. They're all Somalis. According to this post, 25% of Somalia's GDP comes from remittance money being sent from the United States. 25% of their GDP is these people sending money back home. How much of this $300 million is now in Somalia buying some guy some mansion?
Of dollars in taxpayer money out of the country. Lou Ragoose has a look at the brand new charges today.
The 74th person to be charged in the $300 million Feeding Our Future meal fraud case, Ahmed Naji Sheikh, is the brother of one of the most notorious defendants, Abdi Aziz Farah, who was recently sentenced to 28 years in prison. Farah was convicted with a group of others of stealing $50 million of taxpayer money. Now his brother Sheikh is accused of helping him launder that money.
Now, in any normal country, this would cause a major backlash from the native population. But liberals actually want this. This is the greatest form of social justice. And anyone else who dares to speak out against programs getting robbed that are meant to feed hungry children are silenced and called bigots and racist and intolerant. And when you understand the entire game plan, it starts to make sense. Did you guys know that 25% of Somalia's GDP comes from remittance, money being sent from the United States to Somalia? So the strategy is to steal money from the American taxpayer, give Somali residents free housing, free food, free school, free healthcare, give them such a comfortable lifestyle that they can afford to have 4 or 5 children, while the native-born population struggles to have 1, 2 if they're lucky. And then as their population outgrows the native population, they have more political power. And then they can enact legislation that exclusively benefits Somali people. And the money that's not exclusively for them, they can just steal it through fraud. And the more money they get, the more they send back to Somalia, because that is their goal.
Yep, he's right. He's right. You know, it's something like 10% of Somalis work in Minneapolis. Their job is to find out ways to scheme, fraud, and to build their power to enact their will upon the Americans. They're trying to get into office. They're trying to control everything they can control. All the while, the taxpayer is funding it. Millions and millions and millions of dollars of normal, hardworking people's money is getting funneled into the pockets of these immigrants who contribute nothing and cost millions. But we're supposed to celebrate it as some victory of diversity and multiculturalism because somebody opened up a Somali restaurant. Now that restaurant just cost you $300 million. So how long can you can get away with this kind of crap for a while when you live in such a rich country. You know, you can let yourself be taken advantage of and act like you're somehow the good person. You know, I know people like this, these Minneapolis politicians and civil rights activists and all this kind of crap. They're patting themselves on the back thinking that they're the good people here. They think that they're the tolerant, open ones who are like, let's bring in the world. Let's not have borders. That's a bad thing to do. Meanwhile, the innocent people who pay in all this money are victimized. Not to mention the crime, not to mention the burden on the housing supply. So they create problems, but they act like they're solving problems.
Heard the guy say it at the Ilhan Omar rally. But speaking of Ilhan Omar, someone who openly hates America and declares her allegiance for a foreign country, here she is going to a church and berating a bunch of white people for liking Charlie Kirk, a man who stood up for America instead of Somalia.
I do believe those of you who are interested in rewriting this hateful man's history are full of shit.
Thank you. It is despicable that church would allow her to do that. And what's up with white liberals loving foreigners, telling them how evil they are for caring about their country?
The white liberals have this. They have such low self-esteem and such hatred for themselves. And so, you know, a lot of times you'll catch them projecting and saying, oh, you hate yourself. That's why you're for Trump or something stupid like that. But really, they have this deep-seated hatred for themselves because they've drank the Kool-Aid of all the nonsense, the CRT, and all the garbage that has been coming out of the universities for the last 60 years. They believe it all. They believe that there's white fragility. They believe there's white guilt and all this kind of nonsense, and it makes them hate themselves. So when they can encourage the hatred from other people, they then hold up these foreigners as if they're the noble moral cause. They're the ones who know what morality really is, because these white liberals can't possibly know, because they're such evil bad people. So they need to be led by these some kind of oppressed minority group, because surely they know what's really really moral and really noble. And it's just a disgusting, twisted worldview. And then you end up getting this crazy shit like $300 million stolen by the moral people.
Omar knows that their plan has succeeded. They have successfully beat the residents of Minnesota into ideological submission. Minnesotans, I guess, have just adopted the belief that their sole purpose in life is to serve the interests of Somalia. And Charlie Kirk, a man who stood up for America and American values, has to be characterized as an evil, awful person. And that's why Ilhan Omar goes on CNN, mocks Charlie Kirk's death, and says he belongs in the dustbin of history. Watch.
What I find jarring is that there's so many people willing to excuse the most reprehensible things that he said, that they agree with that they're willing to have monuments for him, that they want to create a day to honor him, and that they want to produce resolutions.
So the Somalis stole $300 million. Somehow in a couple years, Ilhan Omar has gone from a net worth of $30,000 to $30 million. Where is that money coming from? Where do you think that money's coming from? You think that's all in the up and up? What's she start a business or something that went crazy? She didn't do anything. She got elected to Congress, and now somehow she has $30 million. And then in the meantime, we're seeing that there's 74 Somalis who have been arrested stealing $300 million from Minnesota, the same place where Ilhan Omar is standing up for the Somali community. She has to be investigated. They have to look into this money. There is no way that this is clean money. She's getting a cut. She's making sure that they're getting these programs, that they're getting funded, that they know how to manipulate the system and steal this money. And she's getting a kickback. I guarantee you there's something shady going on there. It's just disgusting. So the North Carolina passed their congressional map, so they've now increased the number of Republican seats in the House by 1 and decreased the Democrat seats by 2. So it's a difference of 2 seats. So good job, Republicans. Democrats are not happy about that. Let's see. So this is a clip from Piers Morgan, and the rest of it was better than this, but so there's still all this Hitler talk, Trump's Hitler. And so Harry is trying to claim that no Democrats have ever called Trump Hitler and blah, 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 stupid shit, when they obviously have. And so they kind of have a little back and forth. Let's take a listen.
By the way, I'd be happy to answer the question about whether or not a high-ranking Democrat has used this rhetoric. Who is Kamala Harris?
I know. I want you to answer all the questions. I want you to answer all the questions
for you. Who is Kamala Harris?
Wait. Answer all the questions I just gave you. And can you name me when Kamala Harris said that Donald Trump is Hitler?
Who was
when did Kamala Harris? Great.
Was Kamala Harris last year a high-ranking Democrat when she was?
When did Kamala Harris call Donald Trump Hitler?
October of 2024. Kamala Harris said on the campaign trail, Donald Trump vowed to be a dictator on day one. His former chief of staff said he wanted generals like Hitler's. Donald Trump openly admires dictators, including Adolf Hitler. Last October, that was said on the campaign trail from the
So
Democrat
Kamala Harris said this during the campaign, during the closing days of the campaign. It was her final campaign pitch. Is that high enough ranking for you? You guys, you supported her for president.
Exactly, because there have been
So
reports
the person
that Donald
that you
Trump
supported
kept...
for president is someone
just relax,
who was
Jack.
campaigning by
breather.
calling Trump Hitler.
Jack,
And
take a
she's
You're
not
breather.
so
just-
disingenuous when you bring this stuff up. You can't, you can't even acknowledge the fact that your own candidate was on the campaign. She's got a video about it. It's on her Facebook, or it's on her
let
Twitter
me
page.
offer one. Let me offer one here, which is Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton literally compared Trump's rally in Ohio last week to Nazi leader Adolf Hitler's speeches. Speaking of the Texas Tribune Festival in Austin, she made reference to Hitler's speeches, which saw people.
Harry's all upset. He's like, but let me justify it. Let me try to spin it away so that it didn't actually happen, so that we don't look bad, you know. And they're not letting him at all. He's pathetic. So he knows that he's lying, and that they caught him, and now he's trying to think of a way that he can spin this to his favor.
Their right arms in the air in the Nazi salute. I remember as a young student, trying to figure out how people basically got bought in by Hitler. She said, how did that happen? I'd watch newsreels and I'd see this guy standing there ranting and raving and so on. It happens all the time.
Yes, obviously it happens all the time. And this is one of the tricks these people play. It's like it's so disingenuous, and it's basically a fake argument. So you get into a debate with somebody and you'll say, oh, well, the Democrats called Trump Hitler all the time. And instead of knowing that that's an actual true statement, what they'll say is, give me a time and a place and a date and a location when that ever happened, right? Like you're going to remember every detail about these. No, the way that it works is that you hear this repeatedly. The brain doesn't remember all the details, but it remembers the story, basically, the story that Democrats were calling Trump Hitler. So you're not sure, can't remember. You have to go back and look up the details and stuff. But it's a shady debate tactic by liars to say, oh yeah, when, who, where, what, why, and you're supposed to on the spot pull out, oh, Kamala Harris, and then if you do, he'll say when. And you say, oh gosh, I don't know, October 12th of 2024. Oh yeah? Well, where was she talking? Who was she talking to? What was the temperature like outside? What'd you have for lunch that day? Try to bury you in these details instead of having an honest conversation and saying, yeah, I know. Yeah. A lot of the Democrat leaders have called Trump Hitler, and that's unnecessary and that's uncalled for, and it's ridiculous, and called his supporters Nazis, and it's all rhetoric, and they don't really mean it, and hopefully nobody takes that seriously and goes out and tries to kill people. Instead of doing that, he tries to deflect and distract with unnecessary questions. It's a shady way to get out of having an honest conversation and being honest about what they're saying. Both sides do it. It's super annoying. People would do this in debates all the time. You have to provide this very specific detail for me, or else all of the things that you're saying can't be verified and true. But anyway, if anybody wants to call in, I've got a link there. You can click on it and call in. Harry's the one who got the crap dumped on him the other day. There's a bunch of these little debate tactics that people will do, and I definitely see it coming from both sides. And it's basically a way of, if you don't know. So either he knows that the Democrats have been saying this stuff and he's lying, or he doesn't know and he's ignorant. Instead, the tactic he plays is force them to tell me everything they know in detail. So he's admitting his ignorance, or he's admitting he's lying. And he's not ignorant, but he is lying. The honest thing to do would to You pay attention to the news every day, Harry. You know what's going on here. You know that the leaders have referred to Trump and as Hitler and his followers as Nazis. Instead, you're showing that you're a shady dude, that you can't be trusted, that you can't be honest. And I suppose in a lot of ways that is the way to move up in the political world. And so you're playing the game the way that you were taught to play the game, the way you see it being played. But it's pretty shameful. All right, I got one last video here. I haven't actually watched this one yet, so this will be our first time watching it together. Here it says Jen Psaki, whoever that is. I don't know. Is she like a news person or something? I don't watch these liberal news people. If that's who she is, I don't know. Attacks President JD Vance's marriage. Wonders if Second Lady Usha Vance wants out of their marriage because of how scary JD is. JD Vance is scary. How is JD Vance scary? Isn't scary? I think that Republicans kind of wish he was scarier. She said she would save Usha if she just came over to her. JD Vance wants to be president more than anything else. I always wonder what's going on in the mind of his wife. Are you okay? Please blink 4 times. We'll come over here. We'll save you. Disgusting. Okay. Let's see.
I think the little Manchurian candidate, JD Vance, wants to be president more than anything else.
Yeah.
I always wonder what's going on in the mind of his wife. Like, are you okay? Please blink 4 times.
Yes.
We'll come over here. We'll save you.
Guaranteed this is more projection. So just keep that in mind.
And that he's willing to do anything to get there. And that your whole iteration you just outlined, I mean, he's scarier in certain ways.
He's smarter
in some ways. And he's
she
young.
Would do whatever it takes.
Yeah. And ambitious.
And ambitious. And agile in the sense that he is a chameleon who makes himself into whatever he thinks the audience wants to hear from him.
She makes herself into whatever she thinks the audience wants to hear from her.
JD Vance is not, he's in some ways goodish on paper if you like what he believes in. I don't know. But I don't know that he can take the whole movement with him.
No way.
I don't think so either.
There's no riz.
It's got no riz, right?
None.
And he just is a little odd. And so Trump's odd in a different way. So
So you got liberal ladies talking about how odd JD Vance is. Have they seen any of the Democrat men? Have they? I mean, just take a look at Tim Walz, Adam Schiff, Chuck Schumer, Gavin Newsom. These people are odd. Very odd. JD Vance is the most normal guy in the world compared to all these Democrat leaders. These guys are shady. They're crooks. They're liars. You can just look into their eyes and tell that they have no soul. And yet here these ladies are thinking that they can psychoanalyze JD Vance. You know, there's something wrong with him. There's something wrong with his wife. It's because they can't handle the fact that he's a normal person. They hate normal people. They like the strange and the weird and all that kind of stuff. So when you're normal, you're strange and you're weird. Because everything in their world's upside down. And this she's just projecting the entire time. JD Vance is a chameleon and just tells people what they want to hear. Because I guarantee you this woman has no principles, no values, and just tells everybody what they want to hear. And so that's the only way she can interpret things, is because she's like that. And she applies that then outward to people. And to think that anyone would care, first of all, I don't know, what she an actress? Maybe I saw that maybe there was a movie poster in the background or something. That anyone would take her seriously and like think that her advice is meaningful is kind of ridiculous. She's in a party that's bleeding members, that got its butt kicked, that is corrupt as hell.
skeptical of that. So yeah, he's got to. I mean, everything going on right now, and I think we have to be very clear-eyed about this, is about trying to manipulate the public around elections. And
okay, well, yeah. I mean, that's how the game's played, lady. Yeah, trying to manipulate the public around elections. Been happening since the dawn of time. That's how the game's played. But I find it interesting and a bit annoying that people like her who don't really know what they're talking about now are going to they just make stuff up. Like, oh, is his wife doing okay? I think that he's maybe a really, really bad guy. He's scary. He's so scary. How is he scary? He's like the most normal guy. I don't know, I guess, what these people mean by scary. I guess they mean he has fascistic ideas or something and therefore scary. They don't like seeing a happily married couple, first of all. These women are probably not happily married. They're probably way past their expiration date and are embittered and angry that they took the feminist hook, line, and sinker propaganda, and now they're just angry at anybody who didn't and anybody who has a good, normal, happy life. It's just pure bitterness and judgment. So, all right, everybody, that's all I've got for you. I'm gonna get rolling here. So thanks for watching, and if you haven't, like and subscribe, that would be great. And I will be back tomorrow.